Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez called on the governor of Jujuy, Gerardo Morales, to put an end to the violence in that province and to respect international human rights. At least 16 people have been injured following an explosion in the 5th district of Paris, known for being a Latin quarter of the city center. Fighting resumed in Sudan between the army and the rapid support forces after the ceasefire expired. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez called on Governor of Jujuy, Gerardo Morales, to put an end to the violence in that province and to respect international human rights. In a message addressed to the nation, Fernandez affirmed that the repression in Jujuy is inadmissible in democratic terms and recalled the statements made by international human organizations about the political crisis. The Argentine president regretted that the conflict had triggered alert and condemnation by the international human rights organization. Jujuy's Governor Morales called the president's statement as gross lies. President Fernandez immediately called on the government of Jujuy for dialogue with the indigenous communities in order to resolve the situation in the region.
Finally, I asked the government of Jujuy to summon the indigenous communities and other social players to find roads for dialogue in order to overcome the conflict that it has provoked with its anti-democratic actions. I want the governor to know that he can count on me personally and on the support of the national government. Whenever he calls for a dialogue, he will always have us at his side.
Let's get to know a little about Governor Gerardo Morales. He's assumed in 2015 the governorship of the Argentine province of Jujuy. After taking office as Governor, Morales started an underhand process to take over the provincial public power. To this end, one of his main goals was to dismantle the movement Tupac Amaru. Hence, the detention under false accusations of its top leader, Milagro Sala, another top representative of the movement. In 2016, Morales approved a new confirmation of the Provincial Supreme Court of Justice that elect 9 members under his direct mandate. Colombia's Senate voted on a measure to approve the sale of recreational cannabis to adults. The motion, which had the support of the government of President Gustavo Petro, only obtained 47 votes in favor with the presence of 90 senators. The South American country already allows some cannabis derived products such as oil and creams to be made and sold for medical uses, while legislation passed in the 80s and the 90s allowed consumption and the cultivation of up to 20 plants. However, sales of the drug for recreational purposes are illegal.
It is sad because a substance that is legal to consume, that is legal to carry, and that is legal to grow continues to be illegal for sale, which only benefits the mafias and illegality. Today, with this decision, definitely illegality wins. This is a highly complex issue. However, I believe that the project was not mature enough, because it is one thing to believe that because you legalize some markets, all the illegal markets will disappear, which is not true. We could end up with having legal markets that make it impossible to combat illegal markets.
The plenary of magistrates of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, TSE of Guatemala, will decide on Wednesday on the use of the vote counting tool hired by the two boards. According to the president of that entity, Irma Palencia, they will analyze the use in a more integral manner. The TSE carried out two simultaneous on May 11 and June 3rd of the plenary A preliminary elections results transmission system nationwide seeking to clean up doubts about the voter content tool. Some 9.3 million Guatemalans will go to polls next Sunday, June the 25th, to elect a new president, vice president, 160 deputies to Congress, 20 to the Central American Parliament, and 340 municipal mayors for the period 2024-2028. U.S. Homeland Security officials rule out that sounds detected in the search area for the Titan submersible air trumps made by humans. The submarine disappeared from radar with 5 people aboard shortly after embarking on an expedition to the wreck of the Titanic in the Atlantic Ocean last Sunday. The sources indicate that upon further analysis of the data, those sounds cannot be characterized as trumps, and it is more accurate to describe what was heard as a sound or noises.
Yesterday, a Canadian P-3 detected underwater noises in the search area. As a result, ROV operations were relocated in an attempt to explore the origin of the noises. Although the ROV searches have yielded negative results, they continue. Additionally, the data from the P-3 aircraft has been shared with our U.S. Navy experts for further analysis, which will be considered in future search plans.
Well, you know, the noises, again, very complex in the ocean. You have to be an acoustic analysis and you have to have context. They're trying to put all the pieces together. The noises have been described as banging noises. But again, they have to put the whole picture together in context, and they have to eliminate potential man-made sources other than the Titan.
Let's take a very short break now, but remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, in which you will be able to find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Friends, a very strong explosion occurred on Wednesday in a residential area of Paris. According to preliminary data, at least 29 people were injured and at least 4 of them are in critical condition. It is reported that the explosion occurred in a building of the American Academy of Paris Fashion School. The explosion caused a fire that has already spread to other buildings. Shortly after, the facade of the Academy collapsed. According to the Deputy Mayor of Paris, Edouard Civil, it was a gas explosion. 330 firefighters are currently working on the scene to extinguish the fire, while 9 doctors are assisting in the injured. In this context, an investigation has been opened for the crime of unintentional injury with the aggravating circumstances of deliberately endangering the life of others, announced Paris public prosecutors Laure Becoud at a press briefing in the 5th arrondissement of Paris.
An investigation is now underway as part of legal investigation that has been opened on the following charges: unintentional injury with the aggravating circumstance of deliberate endangering the life of others. I will stress that this charge was chosen because we felt it was the most appropriate on the basis of the evidence available at the time. There is nothing to prevent this classification from evolving, even if we have initial elements that lead us to confirm that the explosion originated in the building.
The fire that broke out after an explosion in a building in the 5th arrondissement of Paris has been contained, announced Paris Police Chief Laurent Nunes.
At 4:55 p.m. today, at 277 Rue Saint-Jacques, an explosion occurred inside a building that houses the American Fashion Academy in particular, but not only. The explosion immediately caused a violent fire. As we speak, and this is only a provisional toll, we have 7 victims in absolute emergency and 9 victims in relative emergency. I would like to stress that these figures are provisional, as searches are still underway beneath the rubble. We must therefore be very cautious about the figure, just as I am obviously extremely cautious about the causes of the explosion. As I speak, the fire has been contained, I would stress, and the search for possible victims other than the 16 I mentioned continues.
The International Olympic Committee Executive Board continued to be extremely concerned by the restrictions placed on women and young girls to assist sports in Afghanistan, which could lead to a ban on the country's next year's Paris Olympics. Afghanistan had already been given a warning by the IOC months ago, and the situation will be reviewed later this year. Meanwhile, IOC's spokesperson Mark Adams said that it will be up to individual sporting federations to decide whether to include Russian and Belarusian athletes before an overall decision on participation at Paris 2024 is taken.
The IOC-EB continues to be extremely concerned by the restrictions placed on women and young girls to access sport in Afghanistan, which have not yet been reversed despite the repeated calls from the IOC, and which run contrary to the Olympic values of non-discrimination, inclusion and respect. The IOC-EB will review the situation at its next meeting in October 2023 after the Asian Games, and reserves the right to take any further measures to protect women and young girls' access to sport, noting that the specific modalities for the participation of the Afghan NOC delegation and team in the Olympic Games Paris 2024 have not yet been decided.
The Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, received the President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, at the Jujuy Palace headquarters of the Italian executive. Hours before, the Brazilian president met with his Italian counterpart, Sergio Mattarella, at the Palace of Quirinella, the seat of the presidency, and later with Pope Francis at the Vatican. Lula and Mattarella talk about bilateral relations, the strengthening of relations between their nations, and the agreement between the European Union and Mercosur. Them in the Vatican City, Brazilian president held a meeting with the Pontiff of the Catholic Church. Russian President Vladimir Putin assured that the land, air, and naval branches of the country's nuclear forces contributed to the world's balance of powers. The president points out that the weapons of Russia's nuclear trade make it possible to effectively and reliably ensure strategic deterrence. Putin emphasized that this is a result of years of work of enterprises, workers, engineers, and civilians. The president declared that the strengthening and development of the army and the lasting security of the country were and remain one of his priorities, which is why they will continue with the design of armored vehicles, combat attack system, and side of the anti-aircraft defense system.
Oddly enough, at the moment we are seeing a certain calm on the front line in Ukraine. This is due to the fact that the enemy suffers serious losses both in personnel and in equipment. The strengthening and the developing of the army of reliable security for our country have been and remain our absolute priority, taking into account new challenges, and of course the invaluable experience of conducting the special military operation. We will continue to develop the armed forces. The most important task here is the development of the nuclear triad, which is a key guarantee of Russia's military security and global stability.
teleSUR English launched its own video on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click in the video opposite to access our VOD platform, where you can even revisit this news brief. Now we'll have a very short breakdown. Now, don't go away. Welcome back. Fighting resumed in Sudan on Wednesday between the army and the rapid support forces after the ceasefire agreement over the weekend expired. In the early morning hours, residents of the city also undermined across the Nile from Khartoum said that there were heavy artillery fired exchange a few minutes after the truce expired at 6 a.m. local time. Also, army fighters' planes reportedly flew over several neighboring districts. This ceasefire have brought a brief relief to the millions of civilians who have been trapped by the fighting. According to Sudan's Ministry of Health, at least 3,000 people have been killed in the clashes, with some 6,000 injured since the conflict erupted in mid-April. On the other hand, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, said on Tuesday that more than 500,000 people have fled the fighting to the neighboring countries. The World Health Organization's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said he is deeply concerned about the health situation in Sudan, where fighting between the countries wherein generals resumed on Wednesday, just minutes after the latest U.S. and Saudis broken ceasefire expired.
Now to Sudan, where 2 months of violence have severely impacted the delivery of health services, leaving 11 million people in need of health assistance. About 2/3 of health facilities in affected areas are out of service. Repeated attacks on health facilities, medical warehouses, ambulances, and health workers are preventing patients and health workers from reaching hospitals. WHO has verified 46 attacks on healthcare since the start of the fighting. There are significant challenges in controlling ongoing epidemics of measles, malaria, and dengue in Sudan. The risk of epidemics will only increase given the upcoming rainy season. Limited access to safe water, population displacement, and limited capacity to detect outbreaks early.
Similarly, Tedros referred to the WHO's appeal for the funding to help meet the health needs of both Sudan's and neighboring countries that have received thousands of refugees escaping the conflict.
Last week, WHO released a new funding appeal requesting $150 million to meet increasing health needs of the people affected by violence in Sudan and those who have fled to the neighboring Central African Republic, Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. I'm deeply concerned for the health and well-being of the people of Sudan, and WHO is exploring all avenues for providing the support they need.
One of the 30 suspects arrested along with the Kenyan cult leader Paul Mackenzie for the death of more than 300 people who were told to starve themselves to death if they wanted to go to heaven died in custody. Citizens have been in police custody for more than 60 days as Kenya's judicial police investigators continue their investigation and exhumation of bodies at the Shegohola forest outside Malindi, where police discovered the first bodies in April. Prosecutors Yamina of the Mackenzie's case told the Mombasa court on Wednesday that since identified as Joseph Yuka was among Kenyan supporters who had staged a 10-day hunger strike while in custody. On Wednesday, Uganda military said it has rescued 3 of the 6 students who were kidnapped by rebels fighters when they stormed a school in the west of the country last week, massacring 42 people. On Friday night, fighters from the Allied Democratic Forces (ADF), a group linked to ISIL and ISIS, stormed the Lombaria Secondary School in the Ponde on Uganda's border with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The rebels entered a boys' dormitory, shot at the children, and set the building on fire, incinerating nearly everyone in it. After that, they entered the girls' dormitory and killed them with machetes. Firmly that Uganda's rebel group, the ADF, operates in jungles of eastern DRC and has over the past 2 decades been blamed for killing off civilians there. The 20th International Meeting of Syria in the Astana format, co-sponsored by Russia, Iran, and Turkey, concluded on Wednesday, June the 21st, with the issuance of a final communique ratifying the commitment of the three guarantor states to sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the Arab nation. From Damascus, our correspondent Hisham Wenus with the details.
The meeting reaffirmed their determination to continue joint action to fight terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, reject separatist agendas, and promote a political solution to the crisis specific to the Syrians. The final communique also urged the lifting of the Western blockade and called on the world community to increase humanitarian assistance to Syria, contribute to the reconstruction of the country, and facilitate the return of Syrian refugees and displaced to their homes.
The meeting reviewed the regional changes that have occurred in recent months with respect to Syria, especially the approach to its Arab environment, and urged to complete this approach with practical steps by contributing to the financing of the reconstruction process to ensure adequate conditions for a safe and voluntary return of Syrian refugees living in neighboring countries and other distant nations.
The participants in the meeting condemned the repeated Israeli aggressions against Syria, the most recent coinciding with the beginning of the sessions of the conversations, a Zionist onslaught aimed at seizing farmland in the Syrian Golan for the establishment of wind turbines. They also demanded an end to the occupation by the United States of Syrian soil, where it continues to reinforce its illegal military bases that, far from combating terrorism, provide support to separatist gangs and plunder the energy and agricultural resources of the Syrian people.
The repeated aggressions of the Zionist occupation entity and the illegal U.S. military presence on our national soil seek to fulfill the same objective of weakening and dividing Syria, which is why, in addition to issuing statements condemning these criminal acts that constitute a clear violation of international legality, we demand greater international pressure to put an end to the U.S. Zionist occupation of our territories and to recover our plundered resources and also our reserved rights in the Golan.
Syria also took advantage of the meeting to state that a military withdrawal of Turkish troops with a clear timetable and specific steps is key to beginning to restore relations between Damascus and Ankara. A position announced by the Syrian Deputy Foreign Minister at a four-way meeting with his Russian, Iranian, and Turkish counterparts, during which he also pointed out that the fight against terrorism should not be selective and that border security is a shared responsibility of neighboring countries.
Hisham Wanous, teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.